80s ninjas, everyone. All right, so first let's set the stage a little bit. In the 70s, we had the Kung Fu craze. We had all kinds of awesome Kung Fu movies, and we don't even have to, remind you who Bruce Lee was. But by the end of the decade, things were starting to get a little long in the tooth for Kung Fu, and entertainers were looking for another way to keep the martial arts genre going. They were moving into different directions. And in 1980, that kicked off with Eric Van Lustbader's bestseller, The Ninja, as well as a movie starring Chuck Norris called The Octagon, which was about Chuck Norris has to defeat a ninja clan that aims to train worldwide terrorists, and only Chuck Norris can stop them. One of the funny things about this movie that I just wanted to point out and show you is Chuck Norris has this inner monologue throughout this film. I think it's supposed to be compelling. Just see how it comes off.
It has to be. But they don't exist anymore.
I was really tempted at this point in the presentation to then do the entire presentation in a creepy whisper, but she talked me out of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do have to have the echo for that to work.
Ninja, ninja, ninja. Yeah, so what we're trying to establish here is we're not talking about historical ninjas tonight. We're talking about 80s ninjas tonight, which is a completely different animal altogether. Now, there is a description of a certain ninja that I think best sums this up from the period. He can scale sheer walls with bare hands and feet, move with blinding speed, and endure unspeakable hardship and pain. The great ninja assassin clans disappeared 100 years ago. If they were wiped out, nobody took credit for it. And if they're still around, who are they working for? And that really is the hyped up mythology of the 80s ninja. We created it in our own pop culture. And it all really kicked off with 1981's Enter the Ninja from Cannon Films, a Golan Globus production. If you've seen the documentary Electric Boogaloo, you might have seen them talk about this film. The poster alone shows that this is when the 80s ninja was born. This actual image was ganked like 5 times. It was ganked for like the cover of Sega's Shinobi. It was ganked for countless ninja magazines that we'll get into in a minute. It was just the seminal image of a ninja in our mind's eye. But there was a problem early on with the casting. They wanted an American actor, and there was a personality conflict the first few days on the set. And so he bounced, and they said, well, what are we going to do? And in their infinite low-budget wisdom, they said, well, we'll just get the first available person. So they got Italian actor Franco Nero, and you're right, to play a ninja. And then they dubbed an American accent over him. This movie is great, like it in a bad way. It's got just the most over-the-top action. In the cheesiest, best, worst way possible. It's even got these cliche villains, like these cartoon character guys with like hooks on their hands, and they have these German accents that are supposed to be threatening but just come off as cliche. There's a moment in this film when Franco Nero beats this guy up in a corral, and the guy kind of has to run away, and as he runs away, the music actually goes wah wah wah. Like it's but the other real thing about this film is, if you've seen other films with Franco Nero, such as Force 10 from Navarone starring Harrison Ford, Franco Nero is from Italy, Italian actor. He's big, he's broad, he's got a huge mustache. So the whole time I'm watching Enter the Ninja, all I'm thinking is, he's just, wow. He's just not a ninja. The plot of the film involves him. He is a Western student in a ninja clan, which means that, of course, the star Japanese student, which is Sho Kosugi, who's in black up in the upper left, doesn't like him, and so it creates a rivalry, which will become a trope of the 80s ninja mythology. Sho Kosugi, this is his film debut in the United States. He becomes the ninja, the live-action ninja of the 80s. So now it's time for a segment that we'd like to call Show Nuff. In what Oscar-winning film was Sho Kosugi an extra? Anyone know?
Man, I would have been really surprised if anybody knew this. Great guess, but no, it was The Godfather 2.
Yeah, he walks by in the background. I think they describe him as overcoat guy or something like that in the credits. He doesn't have any lines. But Enter the Ninja was a huge hit, and it received all good box office, so they wanted to do a sequel. And at this point, the ninja fad in the 1980s exploded. So what we wanted to do now was just talk about the color of ninjas, because the color of a ninja's uniform said something about it back in the 80s. There were a few dominant colors. Now, there were a few ninjas, such as Super Ninja and the Foot Clan, who ran around in purple. You had a few in green. And then if you were a truly lone wolf, badass ninja, you wore blue. That was kind of the rule. You also had other ninjas that wore, typical black and oftentimes white. But yeah, you could really tell kind of where that ninja was going to go based on the color of his uniform first and foremost. But this also sets up another trope in the 80s. If you were a ninja that had an army of ninjas at your disposal, the odds are that army was dressed in red every time. And you differentiated yourself by dressing in either white or black or purple or whatever it was, but your army of minions was red. So there was a great example of this trope in ninja history. No, I'm not ready to talk about that. Can you move on? Thank you. So there was a great example of this in Daredevil, Daredevil number 174, written by Frank Miller, where he introduced the hand ninjas into the Daredevil mythology. And with that, Elektra was born a few issues before that, but she was roped into that as well. They are a cadre of red-clad ninjas who go after Daredevil. But Frank Miller was obsessed with ninjas. He actually introduced them into the Wolverine miniseries as well in 1982, Clan Yashida. So Wolverine was fighting ninjas, Daredevil was fighting ninjas. The ninjas had permanently gotten a foothold or claw foothold in our decade. But Cannon wasn't done. Cannon did Revenge of the Ninja in 1983 as a follow-up to Enter the Ninja. And don't be confused, this has nothing to do with Enter the Ninja. There is the only thing that threads all these films together that Cannon made was Sho Kosugi being in them. Otherwise, they were completely different adventures, and he wasn't even the same person. Yeah, so it wasn't even like Indiana Jones, where he was on different adventures. It was just like, and Sho Kosugi is back as a ninja doing stuff. Enjoy. But this time, Sho Kosugi wasn't the bad guy like he was in Enter the Ninja. This time, he was in the lead role. Now it's time for a little trivia. Sho Kosugi was instrumental in the popularity of what ninja weapon? Anyone know? No, but you're close. The ninjato, or ninjato, as it's sometimes pronounced in films. A lot of people think that, and I did too until I started researching for this panel, a lot of people think that the ninja sword, which is short and straight compared to the samurai katana, a lot of people think it's actually a historical weapon. But even if you look at Japanese pop culture, there's no historical evidence to suggest that there ever was something called a ninjato. And Sho Kosugi, at the height of his popularity in the 80s, this was the sword he preferred to use that they designed for his ninja films, and he licensed it to be sold, stainless steel ninjato copies. They called it the Kosugi Ninjato. So it's very likely that this sword is a product of the 80s. Which, how awesome is that? The katana, which we all know very well, is a samurai sword. It is a curved blade. It has a smaller crossguard on it. It's circular, whereas the ninjato was a big square thing that they say the ninja would then plummet it into the ground in front of a wall and then use it to climb up and then grab it and then hop over the wall or something like that. But no, the actual katana sword from history was only used by samurai and immortal Highlanders. It was not used by ninjas.
And a turtle.
And a turtle, that's right. All right, but if you wanted to know the differences between the ninja sword and the samurai sword in the 80s, there was somewhere you could go. Ninja Magazine. Ninja Magazine was an amazing publication, and raise your hand if you actually bought issues of this. Oh my gosh, I'm almost alone. It's you and me? All right. Okay, so it was an amazing magazine. Probably most of it today is total fiction, but at the time, we bought it. We bought into it. It taught you so many amazing things. It taught you, how to trick someone into thinking you're asking for directions before you kick the crap out of them. It taught you how to defend yourself from Ron Jeremy. It even offered you the opportunity to buy a riot shotgun for $11. This was an amazing magazine, and if you can buy some on eBay, get them just for the pure entertainment. You'll forget about your smartphone for like a week just going through them. It's great. There were a ton of these. It wasn't just Ninja Magazine. There was Ninja Master, Ninja Combat Techniques, Ninja Fighting, Ninja Combat Tactics, Spirit of the Ninja. If you're not enticed by this by now, what are you doing here? We got to get back to Revenge of the Ninja because I'm getting distracted. But so in Revenge of the Ninja, Kosugi's family is murdered by a clan of evil ninjas, and this is going to become something that happens to Kosugi a lot in his films. And then he doesn't realize that when he moves to the United States, his Japanese art gallery is actually being used by his benefactor friend to smuggle drugs. He faces off against a evil ninja who happens to end up, being his friend. Spoiler, happens to be his friend, who has an evil, metal face and looks like Destro. In this film, in this final climactic scene, this evil ninja guy can do some amazing things. Apparently, he carries around a fiberglass dummy and a robotic version of himself without anyone noticing. And he turns a corner and he chops the fiberglass guy in half, and then he walks past a hot tub and a robot arm comes out, but he doesn't know it until he cuts the arm off, and it's like, zzz, zzz, zzz. He's like, whoa, and it's like, how did that guy do that? So meanwhile, Kosugi is doing all the awesome 80s ninja stuff. He's scaling walls with his bare hands. He's taking out 80s thugs with every type of weapon known to man. You find out at one point, this guy comes into a stairwell while he's fighting another dude in the skyscraper, and he turns, pulls his mask down, goes, and the guy's face is suddenly covered in these little caltrops that he's been keeping in his mouth since he started scaling this wall. Okay. He is almost what you would call a Ninja Terminator, but that movie was already out. This film never had a release in the United States for a reason. This film is one of the bottom feeders of ninja movies. I don't even want to talk about it very long, except to say, if you want to see it, you go for it. More power to you, sir.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, it wasn't even released in the U.S. But speaking of Ninja Terminators, there was a major arcade hit called Ninja Warriors that took on the Ninja Terminator idea. And in it, you are a robotic Terminator ninja or female robotic Terminator ninja, and you single-handedly destroy the army of a Banana Republic. You just take them out with ninja weapons. This was a great arcade game. It was one of the first arcade games to have a double wide screen, like X-Men did a few years later. It was just awesome. But we got to get back to 1984. Speaking of Terminators, 1984 really for the 80s is the year of the ninja. This is where the ninja thing sort of reached its zenith, its apex. We had come up through the canon movies, and now we were in a place where it reminds me of the moment in Seinfeld where Kramer realizes he's on the intersection of First and First, and he doesn't know how a street can intersect itself. This was a ninja nexus. This is where everything happened. And you know what happens in 1984. I'm not ready to talk about that yet. Go on. Ninja 3, The Domination, occurs in 1984. This was the third installment of the canon series. Again, not related to Revenge of the Ninja, not related to Enter the Ninja, but starring Sho Kosugi. Except this time, the ninja, or star, was Lucinda Dickey. Sho Kosugi's son's name is Kane Kosugi.
Isn't he adorable? Aww.
This is the opening scene. I was just going to set this up for you. This is the opening scene of Ninja 3. A ninja shows up on a golf course and wreaks havoc for no apparent reason whatsoever.
Yes.
All right.
And it's never actually described in the movie why, even
it's
later.
not.
So it's just,
It's really easy to
it's,
Right.
it's awesome.
killing spree just because, you know,
Yeah,
got nothing better to do.
right. It's a Thursday.
Right. I love this film.
That's my Titgeist. Now, I gotta put this in perspective for you guys, okay? After this, he takes out 4 police vehicles, about 50 cops, a helicopter, and then he's shot by like 20 cops about 400 times, gets up again, keeps slashing, and then finds a way to throw a smoke bomb, instantaneously burying himself in the dirt to the point that they don't know where he is. Then he crawls away to find Lucinda Dickey, who you might remember from Breakin' and Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. Now, these...
All right. Real quick, does anybody know the gentleman?
Jean-Claude.
Yeah.
Yes. Saw
That-
that clip about 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is his first movie appearance. If you see him, you can't miss him. He's bopping his chin, you know. So this movie is really Ninjas meets Poltergeist. What you have is you have a dying ninja. He bestows his sword to Lucinda Dickey, who's like a telephone line repair woman. And she takes the sword home because he sort of possesses her right before he keels over. And then at night, the sword wakes her up and turns her into a ninja, complete with the sort of racist black eyeliner and eyes, so that she can go out and seek revenge against the cops that killed the ninja to begin with. And if this seems convoluted, it is.
It's actually really awkward because she's dating a cop, and
He's one of
so then this scene happens, and this is my favorite scene from this movie. It's not going where you think it's going.
Right. That actually
Yeah,
happened.
So-
because V8 is so hot.
So I would just love to have been a fly on the wall when the marketers at V8 finally saw their product placement, and they're like, "We didn't sign on for this."
Yeah, sex sells. And you know what else sells, ladies, right? Hairy guys. Because, oh my gosh, not only on the front, but like this guy is really, really sexy. Just awesome.
No, that's
his-
hair.
that's him.
No, he's
Yeah.
very manly.
Yeah. Now, 1984 was also the first major ninja toy line by Remco called Secret of the Ninja, attempting to capitalize on the ninja popularity, but there's actually only one ninja recolored a few times in the line. The rest of them are all martial arts characters from other disciplines. So they're kung fu or they're karate or whatever, but there is a ninja in the line, and they were really going after the whole ninja fad with this. Remco would actually go on later, and you'll see a slide later, they went on to do the Karate Kid line, and if you think that means ninjas aren't coming back, then don't hold your breath. So, but 1984 was also the year of an independent comic book that came out by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, they were trying to satirize the ninja fad, and they came out with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which we all know, because if you don't know who they are, what are you doing at Dragon Con? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, of course, was very different from the cartoon that we all know. And as a matter of fact, in delving into the ninja mythology, they actually did something kind of meta. They went back to Daredevil and they said, what would happen if the canister that was radioactive that fell off the truck that hit Daredevil bounced along the road and then smashed into a fishbowl of turtles? So the turtles are actually indirectly related to Daredevil. And at this time in the 80s, Daredevil was introduced, as we saw, to a ninja clan, and now the turtles are ninjas. If you look at the names of the characters, you have Stick, who is Daredevil's teacher, and you have Splinter, who is the Turtles' teacher, and you have the Hand Clan and the Foot Clan. It was a very big, overt wink to Daredevil. But the comic book was really dark. This is the first issue, and in the first issue, these Ninja Turtles are bloodied and battered and cut up, and they've slaughtered Shredder's entire ninja clan on a rooftop, a la the first movie, the first live-action movie. And then they skewer him at the end, and that's Shredder on the end of Leonardo's Ninjato. So 1984 was also the year that ninjas went into television. And you might have seen the Mystery Science Theater episodes of this. This was a television show called The Master, which starred Lee Van Cleef, who co-starred with Chuck Norris in The Octagon, which was the movie from '80 that we talked about with whispering. And in it, he takes under his wing Tim Van Patten, of all people, and his mullet, to train him in the ways of ninjutsu. And they are driving around the American West in a van, helping people out of scrapes. I would have called this the B team. Yeah, and Sho Kosugi actually makes an appearance in it. That's Sho Kosugi above them in the photograph on the left.
Lots of interesting people showed up in this show.
Yeah, you had George Lazenby playing a James Bond satire of himself. You had Dave McCallum, Demi Moore, you had Claude Akins, and you even had the girl from Wings. Okay, so we got to get back to Sho Kosugi because he was still burning rubber through the 80s with ninja films, but by this point he had separated himself from canon and he was now doing his own thing. This first outing in 1985 was kind of a low point for him. 9 Deaths of the Ninja. It was attempting to be what I can only describe as a James Bond satire, but it was very poorly executed. The woman on the top right, her character name in this movie is Honey Hump. I'm not making this up. In the middle photo, this is a scene in which Sho Kosugi is attacked by a group of what can only be described as either Asian or Brazilian little people, and then he beats them up, and not in any formidable way. He grabs a guy, shakes him a lot, and then throws him to the ground. He spins one guy around. I mean, it's really, it's really, and then the bottom, even though this was, I believe, maybe the same year, it was a few years before Predator, they were still going with the whole commando motif, but very poorly. And we want to show you, just to try and convince you not to watch this movie, please don't watch this movie. We have a clip from the intro scene. Just
and it just goes on.
It just goes on and on. I know, right? The whole movie's like that. There's a scene in this movie in the beginning where he throws a shuriken, however you want to pronounce it, at a guy. The guy gets hit with it. He then runs over to retrieve the shuriken, and the guy is visibly alive. You're supposed to know he's alive. It isn't a mistake. He's got the shuriken buried between his fingers. And Sho Kosugi takes it from him. The guy kind of looks at him and he looks at the camera and goes, and then runs off. It's like, what is this film? This film is bizarre.
They're apparently expensive to make sure.
Yeah, it's like, were you trying to make Naked Gun, or were you trying to make, You Only Live Twice? I can't tell. But fortunately, while Sho Kosugi was having a downturn, Cannon Films wasn't done with the ninja genre. and they turned around and they found a guy with Dude in his last name, Michael Dudikoff, and they made the American Ninja series. Now, this movie, if the Bourne novel hadn't been written first, then I would have quipped that this is like proto Jason Bourne, because he is a partial amnesiac who has joined the army. He doesn't remember his past, but he seems to remember all of his ninja skills that he picked up from somewhere.
Super convenient.
He's a troublemaker, but he discovers that his army base is in collusion with a crime syndicate that has hired a ninja clan. And so now he has to go after the ninja clan on his own, with the top brass trying to incarcerate him because they're in on the corruption and the conspiracy. The main bad guy for Dudikoff in this film is the guy on the lower right. The film spawned 4 sequels. I would argue only... Yeah, Mr. Miyagi's in one. I would argue to watch just the ones with Dudikoff because it's Michael Dudikoff. But you do whatever you want. There were also ninjas popping up all over television at this point. You have on the top left, you have Knight Rider. We didn't put this clip in the presentation, but...
Your rising sun just set, Tanika.
There's actually a moment at the end where Michael Knight, the Hoff, chases down the Ninja Clan master, who's dressed in a business suit at that point because he's also part of a business syndicate, chases him down in kit, gets out of the car, takes him out in a few punches on the hood, and then he looks at him and he says, "Your rising sun has set." Dun, 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 dun. It's like, oh man. And then on the lower right is actually an episode of Perfect Strangers where Balky gets obsessed with being a ninja. And then on the lower left is Magnum PI. Magnum PI, if you see the guy standing next to Magnum, because the guy tells Magnum to get on the ground when the Ninja Clan attacks them at a Hawaii airport. The samurai is actually Mako, who you might remember as the narrator wizard from Conan the Barbarian. You know, in the age of Atlantis, that guy. That's Mako. That's the Magnum PI episode. I'm sure this isn't going to become a shock to you. Is actually the best of all these ones that you've got lined up here.
Remember that episode?
Yeah. He's the samurai guy had an ancient Japanese heirloom stolen from his dojo, his temple. So they have to go back and save him, or save the artifact. Perfect Strangers was funnier. That's true.
I don't know. The Knight Rider one's right there.
And of course, we had Bart Simpson dressing up like a ninja to cut the head off Jebediah Springfield very early on in The Simpsons. So ninjas had become part of our world, and they were showing up in animation big time. Bart was not the only animated ninja to appear in 80s television. I'm sorry, I'm not ready to talk about that yet.
Wow.
We're talking about Rambo: The Force of Freedom, of course.
Oh God, no.
Yes.
No.
And in Rambo: The Force of Freedom, you had 2 ninjas make appearances. You had Black Dragon and White Dragon. They were brothers from the same ninja clan, and Black Dragon had gone rogue and started his own thing. And White Dragon had to stop him with the help of Rambo. You know, they were going to do it together. It was going to be great. So yeah, Rambo had a ninja friend in the 80s, which is pretty cool. You also had ninjas in Thundercats. Mumra decides that he's going to stop Lion-O by summoning a samurai. He miscalculates and finds out that samurais have honor. And the samurai finds out that Lion-O is a good person, so he refuses to fight Lion-O. So then Mumra's like, well, no problem, I'll just summon a ninja. And so he summons a honorless ninja to fight the samurai Hachiman. And the Transformers had a ninja, Nightbird. Yeah, so even the Transformers were trying to get in on the Japanese ninja thing. You want to take this one? I know you do.
I don't know if I can do it as much justice as you.
Okay.
Mostly because I can't get through an episode of this show. But
Okay, so yeah. So Chuck Norris also had ninjas in his cartoon. Now, in the 80s, if you were a Saturday morning cartoon, you had 13 episodes as a season. If you were a weekday afternoon cartoon, you had 65 episodes as a season. But this is Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris only needed 5 episodes for a total series. And in that series, you couldn't put him up against a ninja. You put him up against Super Ninja. And that is his name, Super Ninja. And we have a little clip of Super Ninja to show you.
But Norris just came out of nowhere.
You'll find, imposter, he has a nasty habit of doing that. Doesn't he, Super Ninja?
I'll finish Norris! I've told you that.
He's a little high-strung. Yeah.
You might need a hug.
You know, he's also got Fabio hair. You know, he's got some things going on.
It's nice that his costume allows his hair to flow free. It's great.
Yeah. But ninjas also came out, you know, in toy form as well. We can't skip that. The first notable ninja toy of the 80s was Savitar as part of the 1981 Mego line Eagle Force. These
The
were
most metal ninja of all the ninjas.
because he's die-cast metal. So this was the first notable 80s ninja action figure. And then you had Remco coming back into the stage with Karate Kid. Now you might think Karate Kid didn't have ninjas in it. Well, the toy line did. And they decided that it would be good in their play set to have Daniel-san and Mr. Miyagi attacked by ninjas all the time. So you have ninjas popping out of dojos and rice paper doors and just, you know, wreaking havoc. Because the movies themselves, they might not have supported an entire toy line. You know, it's just kind of a dual movie.
Even the cartoon didn't have ninjas in it.
Right.
Just the toy
And the
line.
cartoon came 3 years after this toy line. So this is Ninjor. Ninjor was from Masters of the Universe towards the end of the line. He was never, unfortunately, in the cartoon because the cartoon had ended by the time this action figure came out. But I wish that I could have seen a scene where, you know, Skeletor summons Ninjor or something like that. I mean, it's like Trapjaw and Skeletor, and he's like, "Are we gonna defeat He-Man, Skeletor?" And he's like, "With Japanese assassination, I will summon Ninjor." Like, it would have just been great. But we didn't get it, so yeah. Well, we got to get back to Sho Kosugi now. We're in the midst of the 80s, and the ninja films are still going strong, and Sho Kosugi bounces back from 9 Deaths of the Ninja with Pray for Death. Once again, his family moves to the United States, and some of them are killed, and so he decides to kill his family's killers while wearing a shredder helmet, which actually opens like this. And he opens it, but there's this weird like Dance of the Seven Veils gauze around his face underneath it. It's kind of off-putting. And yeah, so little trivia: Sho Kosugi starred in Black Eagle alongside which major action star? Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme. The circle closes. So you have Sho Kosugi starring with Lucinda Dickey in Ninja 3. Lucinda Dickey then stars in Breakin', which has Jean-Claude Van Damme's first cinematic appearance. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme stars with Sho Kosugi in Black Eagle. It's a whole Kevin Bacon thing. All right, now we got to talk about Rage of Honor, which was his follow-up to Pray for Death. I should really tell you that, you know, after he left Golan Globus, his ninja films kind of took a dive in quality, if you can believe that, because Cannon wasn't exactly the pinnacle of cinematic excellence. But in this film, he's a DEA agent, but they call it the Drug Enforcement Bureau, I guess. And he works with this cadre of guys down in South America, but they're murdered in this kind of turnabout. And he decides he's going to go rogue like Timothy Dalton in License to Kill. And he goes down to South America with his fiancée in tow for some reason to take on this cartel. You got to see this one scene, because even though this film is just a series of disjointed action scenes that are very well choreographed, but they don't add up to anything. It's just like you actually start looking at your watch. You're like, when is this over? There is one scene in this movie where he comes back to the hotel early on, and he realizes that his fiancée is being attacked by a killer who was looking for him. And the killer is about to push her off a balcony over a busy, I think it's Rio de Janeiro street. This is the best balcony toss I've ever seen in a movie. Check this out. I'll miss you most of all, Scarecrow. Okay, so there was a shift. There was a shift in the mid to late 80s, and we got to talk about this because this is where things change, and they change for an important reason. By the time video game consoles really arrive and arcade games take hold, and cartoons start incorporating ninjas into them, the entertainment industry had to start rethinking how it positioned ninjas in entertainment. So when you have Ninja Gaiden, which hit Nintendo, they were like, well, you are playing the ninja, so therefore the ninja must be righteous and a hero who's trying to save the world. And similarly, when the Ninja Turtles finally hit a cartoon, which is an amazing leap from the original comic book, they are also kid-friendly and heroes and all that kind of thing. The ninja thing, though, was still considered kind of taboo in certain parts of the world. If you look at these images comparatively from the UK at that time, they named Ninja Gaiden Shadow Warriors, and they took his mask off because ninja was actually a taboo term over there in the early 90s. They didn't think, and in the late 80s. I lived over there in Surrey in 90 to 93, and the Ninja Turtles were called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. They didn't allow them to be called ninjas. It was weird, but they still wanted the ninja as a concept to be the hero and no longer the villain or the violent assassin. Sometimes in these films from before this shift, these guys were technically heroes, but they were also kind of like Rambo in First Blood. They were sort of tweaked and unhinged, and they were willing to go the distance to kill anybody they had to avenge whoever their friends or family were. They were outcasts. They weren't what you would call like universally accepted good guys. And this was where things were about to change. You even had, the Ninja Warriors in the arcade game that we mentioned. They were robots to try and neutralize that a little bit. But once things got to a console, things really started to shift. So you had Shinobi, for example, on Sega. And in Shinobi, the plot of this game is that a ninja is out to rescue his students from terrorists, which is a big leap from "you will pray for death for killing my family." Like it's a completely different tone. You also had, in addition to Ninja Warriors, you had Ninja Gaiden in 1988 for the Nintendo. I really want to get a show of hands here on this one because this is one of the most difficult Nintendo games they ever made, yet it was super popular. So I want everybody, it doesn't matter how you did it, I want you to raise your hands if you've beaten this game. Okay, keep them up, keep them up. Lower your hands if you beat this game using an emulator save state. I'm lowering my hand, so it's okay to do so. Okay, did you beat this game using Game Genie? All right, lower your hand. How many of you from the remaining group are liars? Okay, just wanted to find out. Now, there was another game, Ninja Gaiden game, and this was in the arcade. And in this one, it was more like a Double Dragon beat 'em up. And in this game, unlike the previous game where you were trying to, what was it? The previous game you were rescuing an artifact or saving a temple or something. In this one, you're trying to stop a cult led by a guy named Bladamus, who wants to destroy the world. But in both instances, you are a hero. You are not a villain, and you are going. You're a one-man army to save the world from guys in Kato masks and fat dudes with tree trunks. At this point, kids were also starting to play actively with ninja role-playing weapons. Again, this just showcases not only how liberal we were with toy weapons back then. You actually have a very convincing butterfly knife right there. Take that to school. But you also are seeing that this is now a thing for kids. Kids are being sold the ninja thing because there were no toys for Ninja 3. There were no toys for Enter the Ninja. There were, thank God, no toys for 9 Deaths of the Ninja. But they had to make them the good guys. And here's another thing you need to remember in 80s ninja mythology. You were either a good ninja or you were a bad ninja. This is Ryu from Ninja Gaiden. He is a good ninja. This is Sho Kosugi from the climax of Enter the Ninja after he's just been skewered by Franco Nero. He is a bad ninja, and he's a bad ninja all the way through. Ninjas didn't change sides, except one. All right, now I'm ready to talk about this. All right, so this is the Arashikage Ninja Clan symbol from G.I. Joe. Right, there was one ninja and only one ninja who did it all in the 80s. He did everything. One that hated his ninja rival who was from America, was thought to have killed his master, was the deadliest weapon of Cobra Commander's forces, went rogue, and eventually became an ally of the good guys. And that ninja is Storm Shadow. Now, when you're talking about Storm Shadow, you can't just talk about Storm Shadow. You also have to talk about a certain commando named Snake Eyes. Now, in the original 13 Joes in 1982, Snake Eyes was in that group, and he was depicted as a commando. He had no ninjutsu on his file card. He did not come with any ninja weapons. He was a demolitions espionage expert. But that all changed in the comic book in issue number 21, Silent Interlude, where he became... what's that?
That's a really
Yeah, it's an amazing issue. This issue, if you haven't picked it up and you're just a comics fan casually, this is an amazing comic book. This issue has no written dialogue in it at all. It is truly silent. And in it, Snake Eyes has to rescue Scarlet, who is already saving herself, but she's been kidnapped by Cobra by Storm Shadow. And this is Storm Shadow's first appearance. And in it, Storm Shadow, true to 80s form, has a cadre of red ninjas at his disposal. Snake Eyes rescues Scarlet at the climax of the comic book, and when he does, there's some battle damage on both of their uniforms. And you can see that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow bear the same tattoo on their forearm. Whew, they are from the same ninja clan. Oh my gosh. So we learned that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were all part of the Arashikage ninja clan. The way this worked was Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes were war buddies in Vietnam. And then after Vietnam, Storm Shadow invites Snake Eyes back to his father's dojo, where he begins to train him in the art of ninjutsu. But unfortunately, Zartan, who we don't know is Zartan for quite a long time, goes there to assassinate Snake Eyes and confuses the ninja master through a screen for Snake Eyes and murders him with one of Storm Shadow's arrows. So now Storm Shadow's mad at Snake Eyes for even being there. Storm Shadow's accused of the guy's murder. Storm Shadow has to run away. And when he does, he sees the Cobra helicopter taking off, and he realizes that the murderer is somewhere in the ranks of Cobra. So Storm Shadow, are you following this so far? Because it took me a long time to memorize this as a kid, all right? Storm Shadow then joins Cobra in an attempt to weed out the murderer. When he finally finds the murderer, and he breaks away from Cobra, he reveals himself to be a sleeper agent, not for G.I. Joe, but for himself. And then he and Snake Eyes actually end up teaming up on more than a few occasions to rescue Stalker, Quick Kick, and Snow Job in one issue. In another issue, they team up to clearly wreak havoc somewhere. I can't remember what issue 46 is. Terradrome, that's what it was.
One of my favorite issues when I was a kid.
See, it's so great to have other people from Dragon Con here. It's so great. Everybody here's a walking encyclopedia of awesome.
G.I. Joe was my favorite comic in the 80s.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, absolutely. We're in good company. This all comes to a head in issue number 91. By this point, look, Snake Eyes no longer looks like a commando. Snake Eyes looks like a ninja. By this point, they'd had 2 more action figures where they'd given Snake Eyes a sword, and they were giving him nunchucks and all kinds of other weapons. And by this point, he was actively a ninja / G.I. Joe commando. They also added Jinx, who is on the right behind Snake Eyes on that cover. She's in the red outfit, and you might remember her from the animated movie. Jinx is also part of the Arashikage ninja clan. She joins G.I. Joe, and by this point, Storm Shadow is a G.I. Joe independent agent. He's like a freelance contractor. They bring him in from time to time. He helps him out, and they help him defeat the rest of the Arashikage ninja clan, who continues to believe that Storm Shadow is responsible for his master's death, and only Snake Eyes and them believe him. So Snake Eyes and them help him slaughter all of them in this awesome issue. And by this time in the toy line, they had updated Storm Shadow to be a good guy as well. And you can see they even put the tattoo on his forearm on the lower right. This was a revelation for me as a kid, because by this point the cartoon was over and I was reading the comic book. And when I saw that on his arm, I was like, oh my gosh, the toy line actually has more to do with the comic book than it does with the cartoon. And that was when my world kind of changed in a way that only a geek kid can really, understand. So yeah, he was in his cool white and gray ninja gear. And in one major episode, which was part of the Snake Eyes trilogy of comics, I believe this is issue number 95, he goes to rescue Snake Eyes, who has been captured by the Baroness in the basement of the Cobra Embassy, and she is trying to torture him. Well, Snake Eyes pulls a Die Hard, he pulls a John McClane, he escapes, and he starts scaling his way back up through the skyscraper to kill Baroness. Meanwhile, Storm Shadow is scaling the wall, the sheer surface, Sho Kosugi style. He's like, I'm gonna help my buddy Snake Eyes. And there's a great clip that I wasn't able to get after this. The reason that Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes are both angry is that Scarlet was just shot in the head by Baroness just a few days before. So Snake Eyes, that was his girlfriend. He's kind of angry. Storm Shadow, that's his war buddy. He's kind of angry. Right after these guys shoot at him, he says some line like, he says, "Shooting without aiming is stupid, but shooting at a ninja is worse and usually fatal." And then he like slaughters him. And I was like a 12-year-old kid, like, yeah! I was just like, this is great.
That shit was sometimes called Snake Eyes Murders a Skyscraper.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
He just blows up every floor.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the way up.
it's
That's
awesome.
right. Bruce Willis would be proud. That's right. And here's the thing about Snake Eyes. He was also in the cartoon for a brief time, but much like, Storm Shadow. He was in the cartoon for a brief time, much like Snake Eyes, but also like Snake Eyes, he was fatally underused in the cartoon. Snake Eyes couldn't talk, and nowadays they would see that as an animation savings because they'd be like, oh, we don't have to voice over him. We could just, but back then it was like, we need people that can talk. And then Storm Shadow, I think they just didn't really know what to do with him that much. So they took him to the extreme of 80s ninja mythology, such as this clip right here.
My turn. With our weapons, we dreadnoughts are unbeatable.
Anyone can use a weapon, but the ninja is a weapon. Behold!
He's not so tough.
It's like Kill Bill for tanks.
No kidding.
Because if this was the result of hardcore ninjutsu training, we would all have done it.
Yes.
I don't need tools anymore. I'm a
Not to
ninja.
mention the flamethrower that can melt a tank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of ride right past that. You know. He also, in the course of this series, he fights Spirit a lot. It's not Snake Eyes that's his rival, it's Spirit. And he also is bestowed, the Lady of the Lake bestows Excalibur upon him. So I have to believe on some level that Storm Shadow is the rightful king of England. And he uses it to try and defeat Quick Kick at one point. But then the Lady of the Lake gets it back because Freedom, Spirit's bald eagle, grabs it from him on top of a castle and drops it back into the lake, which I thought was just kind of a douche move. I was like, you know, he did legitimately get the sword, so. But Storm Shadow is like, he embodies everything about an 80s ninja that we remember. His origin is right on the money. You know, in the early 80s when ninjas were bad, he was bad. And then the late 80s when ninjas were good, he was good. And he uses every type of ninja weapon because we know that because his action figures came with all of them. Nunchucks, bows and arrows, the hand claw that, I don't even know how that's practical in a fight, but you know, whatever. He has 2 different katana swords, or ninjatos, if you want to get specific about it. You know, he died when he was shot by the Baroness, but then he came back to life, a la Ninja 3, like, you know, which was about an undead ninja possessing a woman. You know, he comes back. He can scale sheer surfaces without making a sound. He can dodge bullets. He can wreck heavy artillery with his bare hands. He can destroy a tank. That, my friends, is the ultimate 80s ninja.
Yeah.